Hi guys. All right, so we are in the middle of chapter 7, which is on decimals. Right now what we're going to do is we are going to start 7.3, which is all about kind of comparing decimals in a variety of ways, such as greater than, less than, ordering them a certain way, thinking about what's 1/10 more than 3/10, and looking at patterns. So we're going to start with, just as a review, writing down the following decimals. If it says 5/10, I read it, and then I make sure when I write it that I'm writing it the way that it says. So if this says 5/10, I'm reading this as 5/10. And I know this because the 5's in the tens place. 9/100 looks like this. If I wrote this, that says 9/10. That's incorrect. 9/100 means my 9 has to be in the hundreds place. It's like saying 9 cents because I know there's 100 pennies in a dollar. If I have 9 pennies, this looks like I have 9 cents. Okay, 15/10 means that I have an improper fraction. I can't put 15 in the tens place because that's too many. So I can realize that I can pull out 1 10/10 and have 5/10 left over, and I have 1 and 5/10. So just a reminder that when we're writing decimals, to make sure we're reading it correctly to check to see if it's right. Okay, what we're going to start with, I'm going to skip these, is problems like this where it says what number is 1/10 more than 1 and 2/10. If you read it correctly, I think it makes more sense when you're adding or subtracting those numbers. So again, if you have to on the side of your paper and mentally it's a little bit tricky for you and you need to write it down, if I have 1 and 2/10 and I want to know what's 1/10 more, and you add it and get 1 and 3/10, that's fine. But ideally, we are going to be able to do these mentally and think about place value to solve them. So again, if I have 1/10 more than 1 and 2/10, I'm looking at my tens place. Well, if I have 2/10, 1 more is 3/10, so I have 1 and 3/10. This one says what is 1/10 less than 9/10? 1/10 less than 9/10. Well, I'm going to just take 1 from the tens place is 8/10. If I have 2/10 more than 8 and 7/10, then again, I'm looking at my tens place. If I have 7 here and I'm adding 2 of them, that's 8 and 9/10. This one says what is 5/10 less than 4 and 9/10. Again, I'm looking in the tens place. If I have 9 and I'm taking away 5, I know that I have 4 left. So I have 4 and 4/10. This one now is switching to hundreds, which I think is easier because, again, hundreds just look like money, and I can think of it as pennies. So here I have what's 1/100 more than 15/100. I know that's 16/100, or I can think of it as what's 1 cent more than 15 cents. I know that is 16 cents. This one says what's 100th less than 29/100. Again, I'm in the hundreds place. If I have 9/100 and I'm taking away 1, I know that's 28/100. Or I can think what's 1 cent less than 29 cents. I know it's 28 cents. Now I'm at 200ths more than 24/100. Again, I'm in the hundreds place. If I'm adding 2 to the 400ths, I know that's 6. Or I can think, what's 2 cents more than $6.24? Well, that would be $6.26. Same thing here. What's 400ths less than 7 and 16/100? If I have 6 in the hundreds and I'm taking away 4, I know I have 2 left. Or I can think, what's 4 cents less than $7.16? If I subtract 4 cents, I know that I would get, if I do 16 minus 4, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12. Again, I'm subtracting 4 in the hundreds place. I would get 7 and 12/100. So these are just kind of like a mental way for us to think about place value. The most important thing is that you read and think the number correctly and think about place value. Our next step is working on patterns. So I'm going to skip ahead Oops, I lied. I'm going to go back. When we do patterns, what I first think about is, before I look, we're looking to see what's changing between each number. So if I have 1 and 6/10 and I go to 1 and 9, 2 and 2, 2 and 5, what's happening? A lot of us kind of just stare at it for a while and hope that the answer pops out of us without actually doing any work. So again, you have to stop and think, all right, is my pattern getting bigger or smaller? If I'm going to 1 and 6/10 to 1 and 9/10 to 2 and 2, I can see that clearly I'm adding after each hop. One strategy is to look at place value. If I'm here in the tens and it goes from 6/10 to 9/10, I know that 6 plus 9 is 3, so I know I'm adding 3/10. And then I can check, is 1 and 9/10 plus 3/10, 9, 10, 11, 12. That is 2 and 2/10. So look, my strategy or my pattern is staying the same. I could also think of it as a way, sometimes I think we see the decimal point and we start to kind of get nervous and aren't sure what to do. If I can just ignore the decimal for a second and just think of them as numbers, if I'm just thinking that this is 16 and this is 19 and this is 22, I can again double check what I was thinking. 16 plus 3 is 19. 19 plus 3 is 22. I just have to realize, though, that they're not really adding 3 wholes. They're just adding 3 to the tens place. So now that I've checked and I know 2.2 plus 3 tenths is 2 and 5 tenths, so that works. Now I can figure out my pattern because I see it stays consistent. So again, I can add 3 tenths here. I know that 5 tenths plus 3 tenths is 8 tenths, 2 and 8 tenths. And then I know I'm adding another 3 to my tenths place, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's 3 and 1 tenth. So just making sure you use a strategy. Instead of staring, you need to subtract some numbers. You need to check the pattern. You can make them into whole numbers. You need to do something to help you with these. So again, here, I'm already seeing 1 and 13 hundredths, 1 and 10 hundredths, 1 and 7 hundredths. I'm seeing that I'm subtracting, so I know that. I could think of this as money, $1.13 to $1.10. How much money did I lose? Well, if I had 13 cents and now I have 10, I can see that I lost 3 cents. Is $1.10 minus another 3 tenths, another 3 hundredths? I can subtract. And I know that that is, in fact, another 3 cents. So I'm subtracting 3 cents. So again, what's 7 cents minus 3 cents? 7, 6, 5, 4, that's $1.04. $1.04 minus 3 is $1.01. If I have $1.01 and I'm going to subtract 3, so I have subtracting 3 cents from that, then I know that I have $1.01, $1.99, 98. I have 98 cents. You could also check it by doing the opposite backwards. Is 98 plus 3, 101, and then you can check. All right, another part that we need to work on is thinking here. I like this one where we see 2 different ways to do it. So we're thinking first, what's 1/10 more? And then 1/100th more. So it's so important to think about place value. So if I have 19 hundredths and I'm adding 1/10, a lot of times people want to say, oh, it is 19 plus 1 is 20. We have to think about place value. This isn't 100th. This is adding a 1 to the tenths place. I see my tenths place is right there. So again, if I just write the original number and I want to add 1 more tenth, here's my tenths place. If I have 1 and I want to add another one, I now know that instead of 1/10, I have 2 tenths. So 19 hundredths plus, or I can think of it as 10 hundredths, okay, would be 29. Now here I'm adding 1/100th or 1 cent to my original. So if I originally had 19 hundredths and I'm adding 1/100th, that would give me 20 hundredths. Or I could think if I have 19 cents and I'm adding a penny, 19 plus 1 penny would be 20 cents. If I have 1 and 73 hundredths, and again I'm adding a 1 in the tenths place, so here's my tenths place. If I'm adding 1 to the tenths place, if I had 7, I now know that I have 8. And same thing here, if my original number was 1 and 73 hundredths, and I'm adding 1 in the hundredths place, well, if I had 3 hundredths and I'm adding 1, now I have 4 hundredths. Last one right here, if I have 3 and 9 tenths, and again, I'm adding 1 to the tenths place. Well, if I add 1 to the tenths place here, I would make my 9 a 10. I can't put in my tenths place, I can't put a 10 there. I have to regroup. As soon as I have 10 of something, I have to regroup it. So then I know that I'm adding 1 to the whole. So if I have 3 and 9 tenths, 1, 2, 3. So I have 3 holes in my ones, and I have 9 tenths. As soon as I add a 10 here, I can regroup them and put it over here, and I would get 4 holes. Same thing here. If I have 3 and 9 tenths and I'm adding 100th, I don't see a number in the hundredths place. I can just put a 0 there for right now because I have 0 in the hundredths place. And now if I add 100th there, I know that I have 3 and 91 hundredths. So the most important thing there is just to keep in mind place value and really think about what you're doing for each number. All right, next part is, can we compare these decimals? So before we skip all these. Skipping this. All right, so when we compare decimals, we're thinking which one's greater than or less than. So one strategy is, again, if you have these numbers, I have 62 hundredths, 23 hundredths, and 6 tenths from least to greatest. One strategy they show here is to stack them. So then you can compare all the different place values. Because when they're written kind of in line like this, sometimes our brains get confused because we're jumping back and forth between everything. When we're comparing them, we need to really think about place value. So if I have 62 hundredths, and then I'm going to line up my 23 hundredths, and then I have my 6 tenths. Well, I need to put the 6 right here because this whole column is the tenths place, and this 6 is in the tenths place. So I see that I don't have any hundreds. I know that 6/10 is the same as 60 hundredths, so I could put a 0 here if I wanted. Now I can compare. If I want to know the least, most important part, read the directions, the least to the greatest. I see in my ones that I have only 0, 1, so that's not helpful. Now I'm going to go to my tenths. I have 6/10, 2/10, 6/10. If I'm looking for the least, then I know that this number is my least. So I'm going to put that one first, 0 and 23 hundredths, and then sometimes I like to cross it out so I know that I did that one. Now I'm going to compare because I have 6 and 6 in my tenths place. Again, that's a tie, so I'm going to move to my hundredths place. I'm looking for which one's the least. I have 2 hundredths or 0 hundredths. I know that 0 is less than 2, so my next number is going to be 6/10. I'm going to write what it originally was up here as 6/10, even though here I have 60 hundredths. And then my biggest one must be 0 and 62. I could also think of it as money. I know 23 cents is less than 60 cents, which is less than 62 cents. So again, we are comparing the place of value and the value of each of these numbers. So right here, I have 76 hundredths or 8/10. A lot of times kids are like, oh, 76 is bigger than 8, but you're not thinking of the actual value of each number. This 8/10 and this is 7/10. If I'm just comparing place value, I know that 8/10 is more than 7/10, so I can see that this is bigger than 76 hundredths, or if I'm looking, I can compare as well, and I can put a 0 here because I have a 0 in the hundredths place. If I have 76 hundredths or 80 hundredths, I can see that 80 hundredths is bigger. This one right here, I have 21 hundredths or I have 12 hundredths. Well, I know that if I'm thinking about money, 21 cents is more than 12 cents, so I can put my 21 hundredths is greater than 12 hundredths. Again, here I have 4/10 and 24 hundredths. 4/10 is really 40 hundredths. So then I can see that 40 hundredths is greater than 24 hundredths. Here I see 30 hundredths and 33 hundredths. I know 33 hundredths because I have more in the hundredths place. 3 hundredths is more than 0, is greater. So 30 hundredths is less than 33 hundredths. The only other part of this is ordering the decimals. Again, the number one thing is read the directions because sometimes they want you to go greatest to least. Sometimes they want you to go least to greatest. So for number 15, again, my strategy is to think about place value, and I'm going to stack it. I'm going to put the 2 right here because the 1 is in the tenths place, and this has 2/10, and then I have 15 hundredths. Again, sometimes I add that 0 there just because I know that I have 0 in the hundredths place, and I just like to see that. Now I'm comparing the least. I look at my ones place. They're all zeros, so I can't compare that. Now I'm going to look in my tenths place. I'm looking for the smallest. I see I have a 1 in the 1800s and I have a 1 in the 15. So I know I have to compare these two. I need to figure out which one's smaller. I can go to the hundredths place. I know that right here, 5 hundredths is smaller than 8 hundredths. So again, when I'm comparing them, I know that 15 hundredths is smaller than 18 hundredths. I could think of it as money as well. If I'm looking up here and I want to put my 0, 18 cents, 20 cents, 15 cents, I know for this one, let me write it right next to it actually. I know that we're not going to do this. Don't be lazy. You can rewrite the decimals. It is not that hard. We are not asking you to write an essay. You can put them in order. I put a comma in between, space them out. I know 15 hundredths is the smallest, then 18 hundredths, then 2/10 because I know 2/10 is 20 hundredths. All right, let's check the next one. The next one says 8/10, which again, I could put a little 0 there to remind myself that it's 80 hundredths, 17 hundredths, 31 hundredths. I want the smallest, so I'm thinking of money. Which one's the smallest? 80 cents, 17 cents, or 31 cents? I know 17 hundredths is the smallest. I now know that the next smallest is 31 hundredths. And I know the biggest is 8/10. I'm going to write it like it originally was. All right, this next one. I have 1 and 4 hundredths. I have 4 hundredths and 14 hundredths. Again, I could, to show my work, show my place value, and I'm starting here, I want the smallest. Well, automatically I know 1 and 4 hundredths is the biggest because it has the 1 in the ones place and the rest of them just have 0. So now I'm going to go to my tenths and I'm going to look there. I have between these two, this one has 0 tenths and this one has 1. So I know that this is the smallest, 0 and 4 hundredths. I know the next smallest is 0 and 14 hundredths. And I know the biggest is 1 and 4 hundredths. Again, think of money. Which one's the smallest? $1, 4 cents, 4 cents, or 14 cents? 14 cents is the smallest, then 14 cents, and the biggest is 1 and 4. hundredths. All right, just be careful, read the directions when you're ordering numbers. One last one. Beth and Andrew think that 23 hundredths is greater than 3 tenths. Do you agree, and why? So again, I'm looking, and a lot of kids think, oh yeah, 23 is way bigger than 3, so of course. But you need to think about place value. So if I have 23 hundredths and 3 tenths, when I need to know about 3 tenths is that it equals 30 hundredths, because if I multiply them both by 10. So I know that 3 tenths, if I put a 0 here, is also equivalent to 30 hundredths, and now I can compare them. I actually see that 30 hundredths is bigger than 23 hundredths. So be careful when you see something in tenths, and make sure you think about the value of what each number really is. All right, if you need to practice anything with comparing decimals in your workbook, you can make sure that you've completed pages. Hang on, let me pull it up. For comparing decimals, pages 9, 10, 11, and 12 in your workbook all go over comparing decimals. All right, hope that's helpful. Bye.